Folks joining us slow down just a little bit. We'll go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Timothy Bennett. I just want to welcome everyone to this session. Thanks for taking time out of your conference and to join our session. I have several Da Vinci IG implementers and developers on this panel today that's joining us, namely Tony Shing from ZOmega and Adam Cole from Smile CDR. It looks like Aaron Seib from Onyx might not be able to attend, so it may just be the three of us on this panel. Just a couple of things here before I have Tony and Adam introduce themselves, and before we get started with our discussions around the role of testing and certification in interoperability of FHIR. You know, with the publications of final rules from both CMS and ONC in the past year, there's a number of Da Vinci and other HL7 FHIR IGs that are now in the spotlight, now sort of entering this new sort of domain for them where for payers and providers, there's a requirement that they, you know, a federal reg requirement for them to use these Da Vinci enabled IG health IT technology. And so while these standards and implementation guides are, you know, obviously the crucial, critical first step to, you know, standardization, to interoperability, to compliance, they alone do not sort of guarantee interoperability of implementations, you know, deployed out into the real world. And, you know, testing and certification also sort of plays a critical role to help establish, you know, a singular, consistent interpretation of compliance, and also sort of providing a market with, you know, an independent assessor of compliance, you know, among other advantages. So my name is Timothy Bennett. As I mentioned before, I'm the Director of Strategic Healthcare Initiatives at the Drummond Group. The Drummond Group has, you know, served the health IT ecosystem for over a decade now as one of ONC's authorized test labs and accredited certification bodies, as I have been and Drummond has been involved in, you know, testing and certifying health IT solutions and software and applications for, you know, for over 10 years now. And we at Drummond have recently launched a testing and certification program for these FHIR IGs that have been called out in the CMS final rules for, you know, patient access and interoperability, along with our partner at Aegis and their Touchstone FHIR testing platform. And, you know, these panelists today are among our first, you know, participants in this certification program. And, you know, we hope to get their insights today and perspectives on the value of testing and certification as it pertains to the success of compliance and interoperability in real world deployment. So let me have Tony first introduce himself, and then Adam, and then we'll kind of jump in with you know, some of our questions and that I'm going to pose to these gentlemen.
Thanks, Tim. So for myself as the VP of Interop Strategy, mainly my role is to drive our various initiatives, partnering with our fellow industry partners and clients. A big part of my involvement with Da Vinci, which ZOmega is a founding member of, is really working on the use cases that matter to our clients, other payers, our industry partners. An example of which is, for example, the what we now know as the CMS patient access rule. Prior to the rule dropping, I recall back in 2019, back when we were, the last time we were allowed to meet in person at HIMSS, we actually, with our fellow Da Vinci partners, demonstrated some integrations that are related to the various payer data exchange use cases. And also in 2019, we did a lot of work around another aspect, which is the burden reduction, the prior authorization use cases. And we're a big believer in that to really help drive efficiencies. Being a care management platform as well, and having payers, do a lot of the side, this was a natural fit for us to really provide sort of the scenario from within the EMO workflow, and just working with our clinician support partners that we already do work with, and then ultimately getting that into the payer system and back into the provider again. So there's also other collaboratives around social care, Gravity, et cetera. Just a lot of wonderful work that's happening in interop space right now, all in parallel. And I really do believe that we're all working hand in hand to help drive interoperability, and which will result in huge positive change in our industry for all stakeholders, consumers, providers, payers, et cetera. And we're also proud participants of programs such as the Drummond Testing and Certification Program, and support pretty much various efforts which really help drive the standardization, quality, compliance in our industry. So with that, Tim, thanks for having us on here today.
And thanks, Tony. Adam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Timothy and Tony. I can start on the easy part and just read off the slide. So Adam Cole, Senior Solutions Architect and Head of Sales Engineering at Smile CDR. And a pleasure to be here. So a quick background, I've been in digital health for 25 years, mostly in the life sciences side, more recently in the, I'll say, proper healthcare side of things. And I've been able actually throughout those 25 years to mostly be able to avoid HL7 and FHIR. So I'm probably the new guy on the block here, which gives me an interesting perspective. I did, in my previous role, I did actually was a customer of Smile CDR, and I got really excited in that about FHIR and what FHIR represents and can do for the healthcare industry. And just, on a personal level, I got particularly excited about Smart on FHIR and how the whole app ecosystem can now be normalized. And so I think there's huge potential in this space, and so exciting that when it came time to look for another role, I jumped right into the FHIR world along with Smile. And of course, Smile CDR is the reference implementation of FHIR in Java. And we may be better known for our open source platform, Happy FHIR. And it's quite involved in a number of initiatives. And yeah, I just work with a great group of passionate and wickedly intelligent people. And yeah, I think we want to talk more about the certification process than my background and Smile's background. So why don't we flip over onto that?
Yeah, sure. So so Tony and Adam, as we know from the CMS final rule, I know we're all excited that that there's some regulatory steps being taken to mandate FHIR, and to hopefully at some point make it ubiquitous in the marketplace in terms as an interoperability solution, at least a key part of it. But one of the things that CMS did with their final rule, unlike what ONC has done, is they did not establish a mandatory testing and certification program for implementers. Although there are compliance provisions for the payer health plans that are part of the Medicare and Medicaid programs that are called out in the final rule. But they didn't establish a testing and certification program like ONC did. So I guess from the question I would have you guys address first is what value did you see in investing your resources respectively to to test and certify, with an independent assessor, with your solutions.
Yeah, well, absolutely. If I'll say, we had many of our early CMS customers ask us about, testing and certification. And of course, in the early days, Inferno was the one that would come up regularly, and then Touchstone, and it was a question of one or the other. And fundamentally, we're all here because the goal of FHIR and of the CMS mandate is about interop, and that means that we all need to be on the same page and interpreting the specification the same way. And none of us would build a complex piece of software and release it to our customers without testing it. And so, in a similar sense, certification is it's the QA of implementation. I can keep going, but Tony, I'll let you take the floor for a bit.
Yeah, sure. We'll just go back and forth for a bit. So, first of all, yeah, I totally agree. I don't think you would expect another answer coming onto the session, but to be in all sincerity, it really truly is a critical piece. There was never any doubt in our mind, in our leadership's mind, that this is something that's going to be needed. We use Inferno and we use Touchstone as well. We use whatever's out there. But I think just from at least my personal background, I did about a decade worth of integration work in the provider space and spent the last 6 or 7 years or so in the payer space. And really, it's all the same in terms of standards being, I always say it in air quotes, because standards alone kind of can only get you to maybe that 80 or 90% mark. And when you look at integrations, even standards-based integrations, you have organizations with IT budgets and developers and QA staff that are, getting together to sort of work on that last mile. And what we're truly trying to achieve here, and I think that's aligns with this team's vision, is really that ecosystem model, right? And if you look at any ecosystem, and especially in this case where the end users are going to be consumers, they just need things to work, plug and play. And the only way to sort of achieve that is through some type of certification process. And there's lots of precedent for this. Some obvious ones that come to mind: direct messaging, right? There's a certification for that. There's obviously, as Tim, we could probably talk hours about all the EHR testing that goes on for the ONC certification. We know what works, even if you go further back, just from one of my experiences, working to take a regional HIE and plugging that into a statewide HIE. Even that took months and months of integration, testing and planning, despite the use of quote unquote standard transactions such as cross-community discovery and document sharing, XCA, XCPD, for those that are familiar, because there's all these details, right, that you need to work out for things to just work seamlessly. So, I mean, so when we heard that, and plus customers as well, as Adam mentioned, we heard the same from our clients too. So what's the criteria? How is CMS going to measure this? Is there some type of certification? Pretty much every one of our conversations, this came up.
Yeah, and picking up on what you're saying, and sharing with the broader audience what I shared with you the other day, Tony. There's always going to be a pull by organizations to differentiate themselves, and so standards help, of course, to help to ensure that we're all in alignment, and then certification actually is that validation level. And one of my favorite anti-examples of this is one of the techniques that Microsoft adopted in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it's notoriously known as embrace, extend, and extinguish. And this describes perfectly Microsoft's approach to standards. And anybody who's worked on a website in the last decades knows exactly what this is about, because the era of frustration with Internet Explorer 6 and 7 was awful, and that legacy still haunts us today. And Microsoft's goal, thanks for chuckling there. Yeah, Microsoft's goal was quite clear and selfishly strategic. It was to lock people into their extended standard and fragment the competitors in the community. And none of us here today want that. And I can say quite confidently that all of us on this call believe in the philosophy of rising tides, rise all boats, and the certification, it keeps us honest and it raises the well-being of all the stakeholders in the industry.
Yeah. So you mentioned differentiate, and so that could sound like it's some type of marketing play. And frankly, that is, that might be a fringe benefit to say, hey, this is something we have, but just from a product standpoint, to provide our clients assurance that, not just vouching for ourselves, but having a third party, a reputable third party, along with the platform that Da Vinci themselves used to do the test. And again, we could have taken, test cases, and we do through Inferno, through what's available through the Da Vinci collaboration, and call it good there. But we sort of wanted to take it to as far as we can go with this. And so when I remember sitting through the first time there was an info session regarding this partnership with Aegis and Drummond to form this testing program. I was sold immediately, and I reached out saying, how can we be a part of this? Because just even based on conversations both internal and external, there was always the question of, okay, well, it's great that you say you support all these technologies, but says who and how can sort of validate that, and how is CMS going to validate that, and how can you provide us reassurance that these solutions are going to meet compliance? And so, this is regarding conformance testing for the FHIR profiles. There's other initiatives around the third-party registrations with UDAP, and so any type of program that helps make this process as seamless and does the testing in advance, so that when it comes time to connect, and that's what really this model is. There's not really going to be an opportunity, the way we're envisioning it. It should just work when you try to connect. There can't be some, connecting and then it doesn't work, and the consumer at that point, they're put off by it, right? And they don't use it. It just gotta work. And in order to make things just work, that takes a lot of work on our end, collectively, right, to get to that state.
Yeah, and Tony, picking up on what you're saying, I mean, we use the Touchstone test scripts quite significantly internally for our own testing, and to open the kimono a little bit, it also helps us identify where we've got warts or areas that we may not be in strict compliance with the specification, and there's a number of reasons for that, and a lot of that has to do as well with interpretation. And so one of the big values for the whole ecosystem, and us in particular as implementers and platforms, is that this really does help us hone our tools so that so that our respective customers can meet their interop goals and exchange their data reliably with each other. And I was going to ask the question. It's a little bit of a rhetorical question, because I suspect I know the answer, but I'll ask it anyways. Are you finding the same things with your use of Touchstone?
Absolutely. I think interpretation is the key word there. You could have very strong product managers, very strong developers, business analysts that are reading the specs and reading the notes and the questions and answers. And a lot of these profiles, right, maturity level 1. And so you run into something that doesn't match up. You look at this code set and it's like, this isn't the right code set for this type of concept. And so the thing is, how do we take that interpretation, and everyone might be, doing their best, and you could all be right in your own way, but technology doesn't care about, us all having a point, right? We all need to get on the same page and agree on a single interpretation for it to just work seamlessly. And I think that's really what this program does, right? It's not inventing Touchstone. It's not, providing all these new tools, but you know, as like you said, we all have existing QA processes, we all have test scripts that we're already running, but we wanted that extra level of internal assurance too, that we're not only meeting our interpretation, but we're conforming to some type of sort of industry agreed upon consensus interpretation of how things need to work. And prove it out, actually be able to try it out and know that based on the test results that, you know, we've actually implemented that interpretation.
Tony, let me jump in here and just key off of what you just said there, because I think, you know, this is something that I know just from a lot of chatter, you know, in the space here of implementers trying to, you know, pull solutions together, you know, to meet the CMS requirements. Is there has been some confusion industry-wide about what it means to be compliant to the CMS final rule with respect to, you know, implementing these, you know, these FHIR implementation guides. And, you know, the implementation guides have musts and, you know, shalls and shoulds and mays, but it's even more than that too. There's, you know, smart on FHIR and some of the security elements around, you know, access for patients and for, you know, how clients register. And, you know, just, and you guys know this probably more than anyone, because you guys are elbows deep in the implementation part of it, of how to actually get these things to work in the real world, you know, that sometimes may or may not be, you know, very closely, you know, specified or required. And so what does it really mean to be, you know, compliant to the CMS regs? And also, you know, that, you know, that additional thing of you know, some folks will read the spec one way and some will read another way, and having, you know, some way to kind of do some consistent testing. And then, you know, like you mentioned, I think there, Tony, having the industry have some kind of consensus to kind of go back, you know, to the implementation guide authors and just have this sort of life cycle and, you know, maturity model, you know, to advance the standards so that, you know, everyone is on the same page. So maybe you guys can kind of comment a little bit on, you know, your, you know, how you've dealt with that, you know, confusion, or, you know, not exactly sure what it means to be, you know, compliant, from, you know, particularly from your customers, you know, will they'll be held to, you know, some of the, you know, the CMS enforcement provisions.
Well, for us, I know we're, you know, I'll just go for another minute and pass it to you, Adam. But just in summary, this could easily be a 20-minute sort of speech, but just wherever we can get it, right? Everything from the regs to connect-a-thons, to consultants, to speaking to customers themselves. Hey, how are you hearing other people do this? Reading the Q&As, you know, you got various resources on Da Vinci, FHIR, and other places where we've gone back multiple rounds and asked questions and gotten answers, and we're all doing our best. And there are others that are just telling customers, you know, I hear from them that they're just accepting that this is going to be every time somebody wants to connect, there's going to be some type of integration testing that's required, some process. And, you know, sure, developer portals and things like that help. But again, how are you going to scale this? Even a very efficient process for onboarding, you know, it won't, when you multiply that across connections nationwide, it's going to be very difficult to scale. And so I think we're trying to come up with a model that will truly allow us collectively to be able to scale.
That was that was an excellent answer, Tony. I don't want to. I'll say, you know, quite similar from where I sit, and I don't want to repeat exactly what you said. So thinking, you know, what can I add to that? And I was, you know, in preparing for this panel conversation, I was talking with one of my colleagues, and it's. Without disclosing any names, because I'm sure some of you would know him, he calls these regulations the 50 Shades of Gray. And I certainly don't mean to cast any shade on CMS with that comment. In fact, let me clarify, quite the opposite. It's these regulations, they're so badly needed, and I know we're all excited to be moving forward on the interop space, and then CMS is in a position where, you know, perfection is the enemy of good enough, and it's time to, you know, let's just get on with it, and we'll work through these 50 shades of gray as we go forward. But there are a number of business rules that are open for interpretation. And you know, again, picking up on what you've said and what we've been saying, is the certification. It really helps to ensure that we're all being consistent in that interpretation and achieving the objective of interop.
Thanks, Adam. Let me jump in and just for all the folks that are tuned into our session, you know, the next session for today will be starting in a few minutes, and you're, you know, certainly welcome and encouraged to go to learn about you know, the next topics on burden reduction. We will certainly stick around here in this Zoom for anyone who, you know, else who wants to stick around, and you know, we just you know, encourage anyone, you know, you can ask questions, and I'll stick around, or you know, you can also visit the Drummond Group exhibitor booth and ask questions as well there.
Oh, and I see that comment. Thank you.
Yep, it was our pleasure. Again, if there's any questions, put them in a chat box, or I don't know if you're able to unmute here if allowed, but feel free, you know, we'll hang out for, you know, as long as you guys are here.
Yes, for sure. So I guess, you know, we'll see if anyone sticks around. Yeah. So
would you guys like me to stop the recording, or should I keep it going?
I think you can stop it. We're probably done, unless there's some questions from the field.
I didn't see any.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.